Your F-150 doesn't need a new engine, it doesn't need a trade-in, and it definitely doesn't need an expensive shop bill. It needs 10 things most owners have never done, and most of them cost less than your next tank of gas. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what your truck's been missing. If your F-150 has ever run on conventional oil for long stretches, switching to full synthetic alone can noticeably smooth out the idle and quiet down valve train noise almost immediately. Conventional oil breaks down faster under heat, and once it starts breaking down, it stops protecting the way it should. Synthetic oil holds its viscosity far longer, resists sludge formation, and keeps internal components cleaner over time, which matters even more on the 3.5 and 2.7 EcoBoost engines that run hotter and under more boost pressure than a naturally aspirated engine ever will. On a truck with unknown maintenance history, a lot of techs will actually do 2 oil changes fairly close together. The first change flushes out whatever old sludge and contamination has built up over the years. The second, done around 500 to 1,000 miles later, gives the engine a truly clean fill to work with going forward. After that, 5,000-mile intervals with full synthetic keeps the bottom end protected the way Ford actually designed it to be maintained. This is the cheapest, easiest item on this entire list, and it's the one most owners already have the tools and the confidence to do themselves. $60, 20 minutes in your driveway, and it's done. If you do nothing else on this list, this is the one that pays you back the most for the least effort. EcoBoost engines are direct injected, which means fuel is sprayed straight into the combustion chamber instead of washing over the intake valves the way it does on older port-injected V8s like the 5.0. That's great for efficiency, but it means there's nothing naturally cleaning those intake valves as you drive. And carbon builds up there slowly over years without you ever seeing it happen. That carbon layer restricts airflow and disrupts how evenly the intake valves seat, and the result is a gradual loss of throttle response that most owners never connect back to carbon buildup. It just feels like the truck getting older. A top-tier fuel system cleaner run through a couple of tanks can make a real difference on a truck that's been sitting for a while, driven mostly on short trips, or fed a steady diet of cheap off-brand gasoline. For trucks with heavier carbon buildup, especially anything past 80 or 90,000 miles, that's never had this addressed. A walnut shell media blast at a shop physically removes that carbon layer in a way a bottle from the parts store simply can't reach. Owners consistently describe the truck as waking up after this service, with the throttle responding instantly instead of that half-second lag they've gotten used to. If your F-150 has crossed 60,000 miles and you have no record of a transmission service, this is one of the most noticeable changes you can make in a single afternoon, and most owners are genuinely surprised by how much of a difference it makes. Old transmission fluid loses its ability to hold pressure cleanly as the additives inside it break down over time and heat cycles. That shows up as hesitation between gears, a slight shudder under light acceleration, or shifts that feel a bit delayed compared to when the truck was new. None of that is dramatic enough to send most owners to a shop, so it just gets accepted as normal. A drain and refill with the correct Mercon LV or ULV fluid, depending on your specific model year, clears out that degraded fluid and restores crisp, predictable shifts almost immediately. This isn't a full flush, and it isn't a rebuild. It's simply giving the transmission fresh fluid to work with, and on a truck that's never had this done, the difference is usually obvious on the very first drive afterward. Spark plugs wear down gradually over tens of thousands of miles, which means most owners never actually notice the decline happening. It's only after the plugs get replaced that the difference becomes obvious, because your brain adjusts to a slowly worsening idle without you realizing it. Fresh Motorcraft plugs, torqued to the correct spec with a light coat of anti-seize on the threads, restore a cleaner, more complete burn, and a noticeably smoother idle. While you're in there with everything already apart, take a minute to inspect the coil boots for cracking or hardening. A boot that's gone brittle from years of engine heat lets moisture seep in and causes intermittent misfires that are incredibly easy to blame on something else entirely, like fuel quality or a sensor issue. Replacing a cracked $10 coil boot now can prevent a fried $100 ignition coil down the road. And since you're already at the plugs, it costs you almost nothing extra in time to check. The mass airflow sensor tells your engine's computer exactly how much air is coming into the engine, and every single fuel calculation the computer makes downstream depends on that one reading being accurate. If that sensor is dirty or coated in grime, the whole system is essentially guessing. A clogged air filter and a grimy MAF sensor together can quietly cost an F-150 several miles per gallon and a noticeable amount of low-end power. And because it happens slowly, it's easy to write off as just how the truck drives now. Pull the air filter and hold it up to a light. If you can't see light passing through it clearly, it's overdue for replacement. Clean the MAF sensor gently using only MAF-specific cleaner spray. Never touch the delicate wire inside with your fingers or a rag, and let it air dry completely before putting everything back together. This is a 15-minute job, start to finish, and it consistently produces one of the most noticeable "it feels like a new truck" results on this entire list. Owners regularly report the mileage improvement showing up within a single tank of gas. Over time, fuel injectors develop deposits around the tiny nozzle openings that change their spray pattern, and once that pattern is disrupted, combustion becomes less efficient even when every other part of the engine is perfectly healthy. A professional injector cleaning service, sometimes combined with the walnut blast mentioned earlier for the intake valves, restores the fine, even spray pattern injectors need to properly atomize fuel for a clean burn. Owners who get this done on higher mileage, EcoBoost trucks often report the throttle response coming back almost exactly like it felt when the truck rolled off the lot, along with a noticeable smoothing out of any hesitation under light throttle. This one is best left to a shop with the right equipment, but it's worth every dollar on a truck past the 80,000 mile mark that's never had it done. This one gets overlooked constantly because it doesn't feel like an engine issue at all, but a weak electrical connection can cause rough, idle, erratic sensor readings and even inconsistent transmission shifts, since virtually every system in a modern F-150 depends on clean, stable voltage to function correctly. Corrosion builds up on battery terminals and ground straps slowly over years of heat cycles and moisture exposure, and it gradually drops the voltage your engine's computer relies on for accurate, consistent readings. Clean the terminals with a simple baking soda and water mix and a wire brush. Coat them afterward in dielectric grease to slow corrosion from coming back, and take a moment to inspect the ground strap running between the engine block and the frame for any visible corrosion or looseness. This 15-minute job, costing next to nothing, has fixed mystery, rough idles and phantom misfires that owners spent hundreds of dollars chasing with new parts that were never actually the problem. An engine that's running even slightly hotter than it should will never feel as smooth or as strong as one running at the correct operating temperature, and this becomes especially noticeable under load in stop-and-go traffic or while towing. If it's been more than 5 years or 60,000 miles since your last coolant flush, the old coolant has lost most of its corrosion protection and much of its ability to transfer heat efficiently out of the engine. A fresh flush using the correct Ford-approved coolant and distilled water, never tap water, brings your operating temperature back into the ideal range and helps every other system, including your transmission cooler, if it's routed through the radiator, run the way it's supposed to. This especially matters if you tow regularly or live somewhere with hot summers, where an engine that's already running a bit warm has very little margin left before it starts to struggle. A stuck or failing PCV valve is a small, cheap part that causes an outsized amount of trouble, ranging from oil consumption to a rough, surging idle that seems to come and go for no obvious reason. This $15 valve is often overlooked simply because most owners have genuinely never heard of it, and it rarely gets mentioned unless something else fails first. If your truck has never had one replaced and you don't have a maintenance record showing otherwise, do it now. It takes about 10 minutes with basic hand tools, and it's one of the most cost-effective fixes on this entire list relative to the problems it prevents down the line. Over time, carbon and oily residue build up inside the throttle body, right where the throttle plate needs to move smoothly to control airflow, and that buildup can cause a surging idle or a slight hesitation the moment you first press the gas pedal from a stop. A proper throttle body cleaning, using a cleaner that's specifically rated safe for the sensors and coatings involved, removes that buildup and lets the throttle plate move freely and predictably again. This is often the final piece that ties everything else on this list together, because a clean throttle body paired with a clean MAF sensor and fresh spark plugs gives you about as close to a factory fresh idle and throttle feel as you're going to get without replacing actual parts. None of this is expensive, and none of it requires a full rebuild or a trip to the dealership. It's just consistency. 10 things most owners skip for years without realizing it, done properly all at once. Do this over a weekend and your F-150 will genuinely feel like a different truck. Not because anything exotic was replaced, but because everything that was quietly working against it finally got addressed. If this helped you plan out your next maintenance day, hit subscribe. We're covering a new model specific guide every week. Know your Ford.